The Fox City SCORE chapter and WHBY are pleased to bring you Biz Talk, a chance for you to hear from entrepreneurs and professionals as they share their experiences from starting to sustaining growth. Learn the skills needed for your business to be successful. If you missed anything, you can catch the Biz Talk podcast at biztalkwithscore.com. And now from the Myron Construction Studio, it's Biz Talk on WHBY.
Good morning and welcome to Biz Talk with SCORE on this Saturday morning. We hope everybody's prepared for their Halloween coming up next week and are continuing to enjoy this great fall. Before we get into the show itself, just want to remind you that the show is brought to you by SCORE Northeast Wisconsin, and we'll talk more about SCORE later in the show. But before we get started with our guest this week, I just want to introduce our co-host. It's Pat Lowney. Pat, welcome back.
Hi, Terry. Good to be here.
Good to have you here again, Pat. And this week, we're going to learn a lot about a topic that is of great interest to both Pat and I, and we are looking forward to being educated. And our guest this week is David Zey from Zeytech Technology. Welcome, David. How are you?
Thank you. Doing really well. Glad to be able to talk today with you, Pat and Terry, and just being able to share a little bit more how AI can help businesses.
Great. And as David mentioned, we are going to we'll start with an overview of Zeytech and talk about his business a little bit. But we're going to put quite a bit of time into talking about artificial intelligence and how it works and how it can help small business or what they need to be aware of, because it's a topic we are hearing more and more and more about. And as mentors, we want to learn more about it too. So it's something we're really interested in. Yeah. But before we get to that, let's talk about David and his background. First, David, can you talk us through how you got into the information technology field and what your career path has been?
Sure. Actually, it was a little bit by accident. So when I went off to college after high school, I was planning on doing music and physics. And along the way, I happened to take a computer science course and found out all of a sudden that I really liked it. I mean, in retrospect, I probably should have figured that because there was a lot of things in high school that were indicators of my passion for technology. But then really kind of from there, it just kind of expanded out, and all things technology, teaching, learning, doing, leading have been things that I've been able to engage in over my career. A lot of my career has been working with assortment of different businesses. I did consulting for many years, both at the enterprise level with startups, mid-sized businesses. And, what really kind of has captivated me more than even just the technology is the number of business problems, kind of, complex problems, cross-industry, and the way they help people. That's really been engaging over my career.
Okay. So what led to starting Zeytech?
So, I spent a number of years, like I said, both leading, delivering solutions, technology, and really found myself competent and a little bit like, okay, what's next as a technical leader? Because that I know pretty well. And the decision I made was, from a business perspective, as a business leader, I wanted to grow. And so, for Zeytech, I formed it from the perspective of, one, as a technical leader out in the community, a lot of conversations I have, when I have them, there's this question that says, yeah, but how do you do that? And I wanted to be able to have a team that I could rely on that was able to understand business problems and deliver them, but also when things got really hard, like difficult problems, that they could solve those too. So Zeytech was kind of my answer to how do I, as a business leader, build a team that supports the types of problems that as a technology leader in the community, I needed to as I talk with other businesses.
So as you were doing this, the world of technology was changing rapidly. So you went through from the time when PCs were really starting to take off to the internet, to the expansion of streaming online type of activities, and now into artificial intelligence. How did you adapt over that time to all of the new technology coming on?
Yeah, that's interesting. Part of it is, and it's just once you start understanding problems, technology problems and business problems, you kind of build up a library of reference mentally. Like, so for me, I kind of, a lot of what I've learned is how to conceptualize and look at one set of problems for one business or industry or technology and be able to extrapolate how does that relate in another industry or another technology. So both in terms of as business problems have changed as well as technology, a lot of that has been looking for the common themes that are always there. When you look at technology, even over the last, say 2-3 decades, a lot has changed, and yet so much is still the same. And it really is that case. And even with AI, AI right now is very prominent. There's a lot of hype and attention, but it's just a tool in a tool belt of things that we've built out over the years in technology.
David, how much of your time do you spend actually working for clients versus having to study or whatever, however you accumulate knowledge about what's happening new that you need to start introducing to your clients too?
So I would answer it in terms of I would say in a month's time, I'm probably spending about 4 to 6 hours a month on what's emerging and what's the implications. But then I'm also probably spending twice that. 8 to 16 hours in a month networking. And a lot of what I find is that, you can go out and read online, you can read Gartner, you can do a lot of things, but being involved in the startup community and knowing what people are doing as active current innovation is really even more important in terms of staying in tune than just the general technology trends, because a lot of the stuff that is actually being put into practice, being experienced, is happening in those innovation hubs and with startups. So it's of the time I spend, half of or a third of the time is actual research, and the rest of it is networking.
So as I look back over your career, it felt a lot like you had to have those experiences and those changes to really build the capabilities for where you are today. So
yes, and it's a good point, because if I didn't have those moments and kind of the competency that developed through those moments, it would take me a lot more to research and know the things I know now. Whereas it's kind of built off of the foundation of what I've had over the last 25 years of IT that has really given me competency that then quickly allows me to adjust and say, oh, that's like this, and here's all the implications.
So you've learned how to put the hype aside a little bit and focus on the reality of what something could do.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And I think part of that is also, one of the things that for Zeytech, and we've even in the last 6 years transitioned more to, is realizing making sure our conversation drives towards value, what is the value and the benefit of what we're delivering or doing. That is actually, that thought process cuts through a lot of the hype and a lot of these things as you're looking at something new or you're hearing. Keeping the focus on what is the value, what is the benefit, helps bring everything back kind of grounded in reality and what we're trying to do. And so that definitely applies from the AI side as well.
Okay. So let's step back and look at Zeytech itself. What services does Zeytech offer for people then, for companies?
Yep. So we talked a little bit about it, but one of the things that is a primary offering is managed IT, which for a lot of businesses, small and mid, it's about the services they need to do email, to do saving files, a lot of this stuff, which there are cloud solutions, ways to keep things moving smooth that are cost effective. And so typically that service offering, while it's a primary one for us, is all about building stability into clients so that we can then move on to conversations about strategic growth or ways in which to improve processes that helps with worker efficiency and just, again, moving back to ROI. So aside from the managed IT, then it really is our co-led IT leadership. And then the ability to do custom development to help process improvement, bring new types of technologies in that are proven, but maybe the client hasn't had experience with, and really building that trust of, when we think there is an ROI that can be a return on investment that can be gained, that we can actually test it along the way and prove out that it actually will materialize.
Okay. So, let's talk a little bit about your team too. You talked about wanting to have a team. As I see on your website, you've got a team put together to help manage this. How did you go about doing that, and what skills did they bring to the party?
Yeah. So, a portion of the team, is I've had a long-standing relationship with, over 20 years. And so part of it was building individuals where not only I knew their technical capability, but also we had the rapport, the understanding. We've been in the trenches together. But then other team members, it really had a lot more to do with their technical capabilities, but also their personality or their character. A lot of what we value organizationally is that high achievement, creativity, and doing that in a way that is respectful with integrity. And why that's important is like when you're in a high achieving organization, especially with creativity, that's oftentimes a recipe for burnout, a place where you can be like, always run performance. And so that's why for us, having that balance of being able to also have honest conversations, indicate when like either we're stepping on each other's toes or one of us needs help, and being able to just be really upfront on all of that helps build from an execution, but also a leadership perspective, a team that is high performing. And that also is helpful because depending on the projects we have, we might need to scale out, and one of our team members may move into just a primary lead role, and we might have to expand out other resources in. But that process of building a team for a specific project, being able to work through, some of that like forming and storming, those things that happen with any team, we're well equipped to do that as well. So that kind of, I think in a brief summary explains, our history, our background, and some of the things that make us unique as a service provider.
Okay. So one of the interesting things I've been picking up on so far, and I mentioned it briefly before, but it's that need to have experience combined with the latest technology and understanding. So it can't just be the young whiz kids coming in and doing everything, and it can't be the just seasoned veterans. You need a combination of both to make it successful. Would that be correct?
I think that's fair. There's this aspect, I think, especially in service delivery, that there's a lot of people doing it. Whether they do it well or not is kind of a mixed bag. But generally, as a business owner, you want to believe or expect expertise to be kind of table stakes. Like if we're going to engage in something, if it's going to be changed to our organization, we want to know somebody is an expert and trusted. I think for our team, as we have spent time working with clients, one of the things we realize is that is table stakes. So one, we have to make sure we can do that. But then there is this added layer, which is, a lot of business today, and especially with how quickly things change, technology, business, and otherwise, relationship, communication, the ability to be, communicating well in lockstep with clients, that actually ends up being kind of the value added piece on top of it all, which is, like if I've got an issue, especially if I'm relying on a vendor like say Zeytech, I not only want to know that they can take care of the problem, I actually want to know that they are invested in solving the problem with me and they're keeping me in the loop. Even if they don't solve it right away, I'm not, guessing like, I submitted a ticket. Where are we? It's 2 days later. Like that there's actually a journey, there relationally, and they know that, we're functioning as a part of the business, especially if they don't really have IT inside their business. And we are functioning as IT for them outside their business.
Okay, we've reached the spot for our first break. You're listening to Biz Talk with Scora on WHBY, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Welcome back. We're glad you joined us this morning. Our guest is David Zey. And before we get back to our conversation with David, I'd like to tell you a little bit about SCORE Northeast Wisconsin. We have offices in Appleton, Green Bay, and we serve a 16-county area in Northeast Wisconsin, plus Menominee County in Michigan. We have about 60 volunteer mentors, each an expert in their field. We offer entrepreneurs no-cost and confidential mentoring. We have expertise in areas such as IT, social media, marketing, cash flow, accounting, strategic planning, workflow, HR, retail, best practices, and many other specialties. In order to register for our no-cost and confidential mentoring session and or to learn more about Northeast Wisconsin SCORE chapter, visit our website at score.org/Northeast Wisconsin. You can learn more about how the SCORE chapter can assist you with starting and or growing your business. When visiting our website at score.org/Northeast Wisconsin, you can complete an online application for a no-cost confidential mentoring session. Simply complete the online form and submit it to SCORE. Within a few days, a SCORE mentor will be contacting you to set up a meeting. Remember, SCORE is no cost and offers experts who can offer you assistance in many different areas of your business. To get started, simply visit our website at score.org/Northeast Wisconsin. And to support small business people, SCORE is always looking for new mentors. If you have experience that you'd like to share with others looking for help in your area of expertise, we'd love to talk to you. Go to score.org/Northeast Wisconsin, click on the volunteer button, and fill out the short application. We'll get back to you and explain more. Now I'd like to turn back to David. And David, let's talk for just a minute or two about risk mitigation. Tell us about your role in that and what risk mitigation is and how you help fill it.
Yeah. So a lot of our focus on risk mitigation is technology focused, but with that, it touches a lot of our organizations, and that can be, the obvious one would be cybersecurity, but there's a lot of other things related to business continuity. How do you come back up when there's an outage? What are the processes, those types of things that also fit into that risk mitigation. Generally, when we work with clients, it usually we center around a particular problem when we're looking at risk mitigation and help kind of work through a strategy. And typically the way we look at the strategy for risk mitigation is, one, making sure you understand what the problem is and assessing both where you are today and where you want to be. And then a lot of that ends up being, that assessing of a risk ends up being then placed in a time for remediation. So it's a conversation. If you look at all your risks as a business, you'll never address them all at any point. But it's about looking at the ones that have either, a mix of high likelihood or high impact and trying to score them in a way that you are always, taking time iteratively to remediate your risks. And that, a lot of times centers around disruption of operations. So a lot of that will be like, what can we do to make sure that if operations was disrupted because of a natural disaster or because, somebody turned off all the circuit breakers in a plant and when we came back up, stuff didn't come up or, like those types of scenarios and addressing like, do we have a process, a procedure in place? Do we know what we can expect if that were to happen? And that's why sometimes it's not even necessarily fixing fully a risk, just knowing what will happen is enough to address that.
So do you have clients that, is that something you bring up to clients or is this something clients talk to you about? What's just more common?
Yeah, so usually it comes up in conversation. Usually, in relationship to ownership or the leadership staff, it will be something, and it usually comes out of like, there's, especially around technology, there's a sense of like, we don't know what we don't know. Can you help us, tell us if we have a risk? Or, sometimes it's also like, well, we think we know what we know, and we don't have warm fuzzies when we go to sleep at night. Can you help dispel some of that? And so that's like where the conversation will start sometimes. Is just simply like, how do we get to a little bit more certainty around where we actually are? Because sometimes, right, even in an organization, you can have certain parts of the team that have, are convinced in their mind that they're assured that for their version of the scenario that might happen, they're good. And yet for, like maybe the owner, you're like, yeah, but it still makes me feel uneasy. And that sometimes is getting to a conversation of let's define what we're good means, and make sure that we're all agreed. Because sometimes it's trusting the relationship more than being specific. And that's where being able to look at risk and assess it, you can get to specifics and make sure that everybody is on the same page.
As you introduce new technologies, especially in this area where you've got a history of manufacturing using older technologies, and as they update things and you're using online reporting and measurement of data and things like that, is that an area where you have to probably take the lead and get your business to focus and understand what the risks are because they've never seen it before?
Yes. Yeah. And actually a really good example would be with like AI, with generative AI. There's now capabilities in AI where AI can remember conversations you have. It can remember something you said before and bring it into a conversation. And you don't really necessarily know when it's going to do that. And where that begins to have risk is, let's say that somebody in customer service, uploaded a small customer list to AI to get some help on organizing phone numbers. Well, it could end up storing that up in the cloud in some data center somewhere in the US, hopefully. And now your customer data is up there. And the interaction that the customer service had, they had no clue that that's what just happened. But the reality is that it went up. And so now that's not necessarily a thought that the business owner, the customer service, any of them are going to have, but it is a relevant technology IT concern. And there are ways in which to approach that from a strategy perspective to mitigate it. But if you don't know, you could be like, well, this makes my job easier. But also now you just gave up a customer, or maybe even, PII, personal identified data, into the cloud. And that creates risk for the owner.
Okay. So we are probably at the right spot for our second break. You're listening to Biz Talk with Score and WHBY. And after this break, we're going to get back in and talk more about artificial intelligence and what it means for small business. So again, we're talking to David Zey from Zeytech Technology, and we're looking forward to continuing the conversation after this break. Welcome back to Biz Talk with Score. This week we're talking to David Zey from Zeytech, and we're going to get into a topic that has been of great interest to a lot of us within Score and outside, and it's artificial intelligence. So David, as we get started, tell us what artificial intelligence really is so we can start with that and at least have a basic understanding.
Sure. So this is the definition I'll give. It's automated cognition, automated thought. At the simplest level, it's having computers think and interact with the world. AI, it's about inputs that the computer can think about and then provide responses. So in the most broad sense, AI is automated thinking that computers can do. Now, looking at that, what I would say is to split it a little bit further and help kind of give some examples that also will help sift our current environment. AI is kind of the umbrella. Like anything that is in this automated cognition, it falls under the AI definition. But within there, we'll see examples that kind of get smaller, more specific and more specific within AI. So machine learning is a part of AI where it actually has the ability to learn from different inputs and generate responses. And so a lot of when you hear examples of, Amazon warehouses that have image recognition and they understand what's being picked and packed off of shelves because of the image recognition. A lot of that is examples of machine learning where it's learning from the images input ways in which to interpret and understand actions within the frames that have meaning. And so that's kind of a first layer, machine learning, where it's learning off of different inputs to give a response. The next level is deep learning, and this is the one where we hear more of where AI has the ability to just like magically figure out that large sets of data have certain patterns with them that are really meaningful. And so like an example might be, say that you have machines on a plant floor in a manufacturer, and they're sending data about force metrics like, RPMs and torque and these other things. And they're collecting all this data, but also they have their maintenance schedule, and they know when a machine has been, maintenance has been done. They also know when they missed the cycle and the machine ended up getting damaged because some blades broke and other things. AI deep learning can take all that data and correlate all that force information metrics with the maintenance and start saying, oh, I know what's going on, and there are certain values that change on these machines as we're heading into a maintenance cycle. And now I can predict before the device or the machine will break, how much time you have before you need to do your maintenance cycle, which, that would be useful because rather than saying we'll just maintain every 3 months, all of our machines, you could say like, we'll just do it just in time. And now maybe instead of 4 times a year, we're only maintaining 2 times a year, that type of thing. That's an example where you could use deep learning. And then the fourth layer, which is what we've all heard about, is generative AI. And generative AI is using these, what we call large language models. They are really generic, large thought engines that can have conversations about all sorts of different types of topics. And those are what we're dealing with generative AI. And why they call it generative is that it can produce all sorts of responses and outputs at scale as we're interacting with those models. And we can tune them, but versus those other forms of AI, these tend to be really well-versed. They're also more energy consuming, but like you can converse with them. They can be assistants. They can help you chatbot. That's like a lot of what generative AI is.
Okay. So as we think of things like factory automation, that's been going on for some time, but artificial intelligence would then be a component of automation. It's not driving all automation, correct?
Yeah, yes, exactly. So, when you think about it, and there's a term, robotic process automation, or RPA. It's been around for over a decade, has this idea of where you use computers to do repetitive tasks. That might be data tasks, might be spreadsheets, might log in a computer and logging on a portal and moving data. Like that's been around for a while. The big thing with AI now is this cognitive automation is another tool in the tool belt. So now you have the ability to say like, we would typically do a task, but we get to a certain point and a human has to come review or intervene. And until they do that, this process stops. Well, now you can do things like, 80% of the time we know that what good data looks like. Let's go ahead and now have AI approve the 80% that it can determine is good, and then spit out the remaining 20 for a human. And now we just, in automating that decision support, we're only giving the human the pieces that need to be looked at as opposed to them having to look at everything. So that would be, and that all fits in the existing wheelhouse of this idea of RPA or process improvement that has been around for a long time.
So one of the things I learned in my career was that automation and new technology would always get people thinking about cost savings and the number of positions they could eliminate. And while it did help streamline and result in savings, you also had to be thinking ahead to say, but we need higher level skills, and it might eliminate 10 old jobs, but it's going to add 5 new ones, and they're going to require more skills. Is that still the case with artificial intelligence?
Yeah, it definitely is. And if you think about it, like if I were to kind of break it down on a workforce impact, there are certain things that AI does really well, and there's certain things that humans do really well. And so like when you think about even AI, repetitive tasks, looking at patterns, recognizing and making certain basic decisions, those are things that AI can do well. From a human perspective, leading, making judgments, building trust, having conversations, creative innovative ideas. Like AI doesn't have a touch on any of those. And so what kind of, happens is, as you marry the two together, what you see is, one, you can supercharge your workforce. So one, there's a scaling effect that you still want your workforce to be involved because AI can make mistakes. It's kind of like, I make the analogy that AI is like an 8th grade middle schooler. It thinks it knows a lot about a lot of things, but when you ask it specific things, sometimes it makes it up. So there is a little bit of that. And so like you do want your workers who know the way things are supposed to be done in your company to still be engaged, but they can, one, have a lot more scale, like I said, supercharged workflows with AI. And also they can start thinking about other problems that they could never get to because they were too busy focusing on these other things that were just getting things out the door. And so you do see an upscaling of the workforce and their knowledge, and the ability to think about things, but also you see an upscaling in terms of just their ability to think about solving business problems on the plant floor or otherwise in more meaningful ways.
Seems to me that this is going to also require a lot more continuous learning on the part of an employee and employers to be able to keep people at that level, right? Because as this improves and you become more dependent on and things like that, you're gonna have to learn new skills to be able to watch over this stuff.
So I think that there, on one hand, yes, that's true. There are certain skills that we're going to have to pick up that we haven't done before. Similar to like when Google search came out, years and years ago, we learned a better way to search that Google, that got better results. And so I think there's that. What's interesting is there is the start of a trend, though, where AI is helping organizations retain its knowledge. So also you can have AI and an AI assistant learning the business, learning things about different departments, where it can begin to basically be, your co-assistant that, even as you bring a new hire on the job, you can onboard them, but also say, here's your assistant. When you're doing your job, make sure you're talking to it, and it's going to tell you like the steps that need to be done, reinforce. You might say, hey, this is how I'm going to do it. And it'll be like, well, don't forget about this, and so it becomes a reinforcement tool in the organization that also helps prevent erosion of knowledge. So I do think there's a retooling, but I also think that as we retool, that AI is going to raise the watermark on our retention of knowledge in the organization.
So that leads to a question that's always interested me as we've come into these new technologies. Is artificial intelligence really becoming table stakes? So it's something you have to do just to stay in business? Or is there going to be some competitive advantage from it as well?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And I think what I would say is, for now, for the next, there's going to be a lot of change that's going to happen in the next 5 years. When you think about where is it going to get more and more competitive, I think we're going to see enough change that probably the prime on that is going to be in the next 2 to 3 years. We're going to see, and it depends on the industry, but we're going to see everybody hitting a certain stride probably in the next 2 to 3 years. But what's important in saying that is it means we have to be learning and curious and engaging now. Like if we say I'm going to wait 18 months and get engaged, at that point, you haven't asked yourself enough questions and explored enough with AI to really be ready to understand how AI affects your business. And you could say, well, we'll catch up quick by using a service provider or some expert to tell us. Again, if as a leadership team in your business, if you've had time to just digest AI, you're going to come up with better answers generally than any service provider coming in because you know your business and you've had time to think about it. So I would say, there's a tension between right now, I won't say nobody, but most people don't want to be first. and they also don't want to be last. And where you'll see like leadership teams or owners that are more entrepreneurial, they're going to push that envelope and they're going to get out there and they're going to see it as competitive for sure. For those who lag and want to be not the last, it's going to be more in that risk space. Like, well, I wouldn't have to do it, except I notice my customers are talking about other competitors that have a better experience. And now like that's going to be the motivator. Like I said, I think being curious now is the right time, thinking about it at a leadership level and actually doing some things like bringing an AI assistant into your organization, starting to work towards making it know things about your organization is probably the right thing. Knowing that it's probably 2-3 years before you start getting to things that are very, are driving ROI and opportunity for your business.
Do you have any idea, where you see us on the timeline with AI? And I'm going to use an example like with smartphones that, there were cell phones for a long time before Apple came out with the iPhone in 2007 or something like. You would pretty much say that when Apple came out with the iPhone, that it took us over the tipping point, if that's the right word to use, that it really took over and became a part of who we are. Where do we sit on that spectrum with AI at this point?
So from a generative perspective, and with OpenAI, I would say we're kind of there. And the reason I would say that is right now they are the driving force within the market. If you look at Microsoft, if you look at Apple, if you look at a lot of those who are coming out with their own AI products, it's all running through OpenAI. It's one company that right now is sitting in that middle. That could change, and that, like we've seen, like we had the iPhone and then the Android came out, that it will change with time. The other thing that is fascinating is the other related but ancillary technologies that are on the cusp of coming out as well. So NVIDIA is doing a ton of work on making the infrastructure that supports AI just more and more affordable and also more complex in data center and AI scenarios. That's coming out, and there are regular updates that even in the last 18 months that have been coming out. But then the other thing is like quantum computing is going to be another thing that in the next 5 to 10 years is going to just kind of shake up everything. And so I think these are all layering, but I would say to some degree we're already there, that OpenAI is kind of like the iPhone at the moment. And now we're going to see competition and some things. But right now, everybody who has an AI solution that didn't have one before 24 months ago is using OpenAI pretty much, And so that also means like you might in an organization have 5 different tools, but from a risk factor or from what's your footprint, everything is using the same underpinnings on the internet, which is OpenAI. And that may have security implications or things that you need to be aware of. But it's an interesting time. It's going to change, but yeah, we're kind of there a little bit. Like this is like the iPhone.
But so what does that mean for small business today then? They should be doing some of the things you're talking about. This is where Zeytech comes in some ways too.
Yeah. And so a lot of like right now and that curiousness that I talked about, it's about getting some capability in the organization in a controlled way and beginning to iterate on it. Like what I would say is a pretty consistent bet is that if you bring in an AI assistant into your organization that is a generative AI, large language model, but you bring it in and you secure it, and there's a few different ways you can secure it that actually fits. Like if you're already a business using Microsoft and you have Microsoft 365 subscription or you use Microsoft Azure, there's a way to utilize the models from OpenAI, but do it in a very secure way. And so that is compelling to get started because you can keep yourself safe while you're experimenting. What I think, as time goes on is we will add other AI capability into our organizations, but we will probably integrate them into that AI assistant that we started with. and provide ways that on the plant floor you can be like, oh, I have this PDF, and as part of a workflow, help me start that workflow. And it's the assistant that gets it going, but it's using other AI components that are more than just the generative stuff that you put in your organization.
Yeah, I just, as an aside, read about a new developed software that uses AI to read a kind of a document and then create a podcast from that document.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting is, and probably just worth mentioning since we were talking about what is AI. In the last 5 years, so AI has been around for 30 plus years. There's been all sorts of research in different ways, image recognition versus speech versus natural language text. In the last 5 years, there was a breakthrough computationally and from a mathematics perspective that allowed these kind of independent AI silos to all come together and start communicating in a unified way. And that has been a big catalyst as well to why all this is now happening. And we see the ability to have, that AI and a chat assistant can read an image and interpret it or produce a video, or like that came as part of the breakthroughs in the last 5 years with bringing all the AI silos together. And now also that accelerates things because every advancement in one of these AI verticals has a ripple effect back out to all of the other AI verticals as well. So there's a compounding effect now.
Okay, so we're at the point where we have to take our last break. You are listening to Biz Talk with Score, and we'll be right back after this. Welcome back to Biz Talk. I would like to thank the sponsors and donors who bring Biz Talk with Score to you each weekend. We couldn't present Biz Talk without their generous support. Thank you to Haling & Associates. Haling & Associates help small business and individuals not just prepare tax returns, but look ahead to manage future taxes, thereby helping minimize those taxes for this year and beyond. Haling & Associates, personal connection, positive results. A special thank you to the Business News for promoting our program in the biweekly business newspaper serving Northeast Wisconsin. If you aren't already subscribing to the Business News, you should. The paper is delivered bi-weekly and contains relevant and useful information about the business community in Northeast Wisconsin. We would also like to recognize the David L. and Rita E. Nelson Fund within the Community Foundation for the Fox Valley region for their generous donation and support of Biz Talk and Score Northeast Wisconsin. Now we'll turn back to David. And David, could you let people know how they can contact Zeytech and to get more information on this or other services you offer?
Yeah, absolutely. The best way is our website. So if people go out to www.zeytech.com, which is Zeytech, that's the best way. Find out more about our services and reach out to us as a team. And we have our headquartered in Green Bay, but we also have a fair amount of interactions down in Milwaukee. But we service the state of Wisconsin predominantly. And if you want to call, phone number, our main line is also 888-466-8350.
Okay. And so in the last few minutes we have left, could you kind of give a message to our listeners about what you think they should be taking for this conversation, what it means for them?
Yeah. So one of the things I've been following as well is what's happening in the state in terms of legislation around AI. What are we doing overall? And something you may not know, but we actually are, at least AI in manufacturing, we are leading, one of the leading states in the country around that. We have a lot going on in the Milwaukee area, some collaborations with Microsoft and the Packers that are leading that. But overall, when we look at the last year's worth of legislation, it looks like generally we're taking a wait and see approach from policymaking, which I think is good, but that also says, I think for us as communities and business leaders, that my comment about being curious and actually going in and interacting with AI and actually using it is relevant because our engagement and conversation kind of in the public square is directly going to influence policy making as well. And so it's a little bit, being curious now is a little bit of doing our part. And also, it, of course, will benefit us as business. So, I would encourage that as the focus, that we dialogue with our communities. We talk to other business owners, businesses that see what they know about AI, and also to share what we've done. I think it's also then a great forum into the conversations we can have then from a policy-making perspective and with some of the task force that the governor has put on. So that would be the recommendation.
Okay. Well, first of all, David, thank you for talking about this. It's something that's interesting a lot of people. I think people are also learning two things. One, there's a lot here and a lot more than you can even cover in an hour. But two, it really is just another tool building on capabilities we've developed over time. And you need to think about it that way and think about how you integrate into your business. Once again, thank you everybody for listening. You've been listening to Biz Talk with Score on WHBY, and you can find more of a lot of our past episodes on biztalkwithscore.com. Thank you, and talk to you next week.